Hey guys, welcome to Dental Experience, a channel where I give tips for future dentists as well as document my family and my own dental experience. In this video, we're going to be talking about the 6 tips that I have for those of you that are going to dental school interviews, so you're not going to want to miss it. And before we get going, I just want to remind you to subscribe, like this video, and share it with others, because remember, sharing is caring. Just make sure that you don't share it with people who are going to be interviewing at the same schools that you're going to interview at. Actually, no, you should share it with everybody. I'm just kidding. It's important that we try to help everybody because interviews are scary. And so it's nice that you're watching this video because it shows that you're trying to be prepared for those interviews. Without any further ado, let's jump right into the first tip, which is to make sure that you nail the questions that you know you're going to be asked. It's almost like you're taking a test and you're given the answers before you actually get into the test. And so they're super easy. Certain questions in your interview, you know that you're going to be asked. For instance, you know for sure they're going to ask you why you want to be a dentist and also why are you applying to that particular school. Practice those answers. Make sure that you have a clear, concise, and convincing answer to both of those questions and you'll be set. Just make sure that when you answer why you want to apply to that particular school, that you include specific things about the school at which you're interviewing. For instance, one of the schools that I interviewed at, I mentioned how I really loved that they included my wife in the interview day. It meant a lot to me that they included my family because really it is a family decision. So that's just one example. Tip number 2 is to turn everything positive. If you have something that's negative that's on your application or that maybe that's lacking on your application, for instance, you don't have enough hours in a certain area or maybe you have a bad grade, you can be pretty sure that they're going to ask you in the interview what went wrong there. Instead of taking that and trying to give an excuse as to why you didn't do as well in that class or something like that, you can turn that into something positive by explaining what you learned from the experience. For instance, if you had a really bad grade in like OChem, you could say something like, I struggled in that class, it was hard for me, but I really learned how to study as I struggled through things. And I met with a teacher a lot, I developed a good relationship, and so even though I got a bad grade in that class, I wouldn't trade that class for anything. You can take anything that's negative on your application and make it into something that'll help you. Tip number 3 is to be honest in your interviews. Now I know that's kind of cliche, but just hear me out. In some interviews, you may be asked questions where you think you know the answer that they are looking for, and so you are really tempted to give that answer. For example, if I were to ask you the question in an interview, would you still be a dentist if you only made $30,000 a year? How would you answer that? If you're like me, you think that they want you to answer, of course, I just really, really want to be a dentist. But in reality, it's more important to be honest with answering those kind of questions. So saying something like, I would love to be a dentist, but I don't know if I would ever be able to pay off my student loans, so I don't think it would be a good idea if that were the case. Or something like that shows that you're honest and you didn't fall for that trick that maybe they gave you. Another example is when they ask you why you're applying to a certain school. This especially applies if you are interviewing at your state school where you can get in-state tuition. They'll ask you why you want to come to your state school, and the big answer is you get in-state tuition. If you don't include that in your answer, then they're going to know that you're not being completely honest because the reality is everybody wants to get into their state school because then they can save hundreds of thousands of dollars. So make sure that you're honest about that and include that in your response. People who do interviews at dental schools have done hundreds of interviews, and so they're able to know if we're lying or not telling the truth. So be sure to be honest in those interviews. My 4th tip is don't show off. Now I know it can be tempting because in a sense you're competing against all the other people that are interviewing along with you and you really want to get the attention of the interviewers and help them to remember you. But don't do anything that can come across as bragging or showing off in any way. Don't bring your origami teeth that you did and show off how you can sculpt things with your hands and you just are really good at drawing or really good at some other thing that'll help you to be a dentist someday. That doesn't go over very well because you already have your application that can do all of the bragging for you. You can mention that you're good at that kind of stuff. The people that you're interviewing alongside of, the other applicants, they could potentially be your classmates someday. And so you don't want to be burning those bridges before you even get to know them. My fifth tip is to ask good questions. At the end of just about every interview you have, the interviewer is going to ask you if you have any questions for them. Some people don't take advantage of this opportunity, but I would counsel you to definitely come up with some really good, thought-provoking questions to ask them. That'll help you to be able to stick out in their mind a little bit and can prompt some really good conversation. Good questions are open-ended, and they often involve the interviewer talking about something that really matters to them or is really important to them. Some examples of good questions that I used were things like, if you could change anything about your dental school, what would it be and why? Or what are your favorite parts about being a professor at a dental school? And what are some things that you don't like quite as much? My very favorite question to ask was, what do you think is going to be the greatest challenge for my generation of dentists? So be sure to ask good questions when you're given that opportunity. So my last tip has to do with this. Now, this isn't your Klonopin, it's no Adderall, it's actually anti-diarrheal medication. So this tip is to eliminate any variables. On interview day, you are going to be so stressed out and anxious and worried, and so your body is going to do all sorts of weird stuff, and you just want to eliminate anything that could possibly go wrong. And so for me, I chose to take some anti-diarrheal pills because I wanted at least the peace of mind that I was going to be okay and I wasn't going to mess my pants because I was so nervous or anything like that. And so for you, it might be something else, but I would advise you to definitely try to eliminate any variables of things that could go wrong during your interview. All right, guys, that concludes this video. So I just invite you again to subscribe and make sure that you share this video with your other pre-dental friends. If you have any specific questions, be sure to leave them in the comment section. I'd love to answer any questions that you have about dental school interviews or other videos that I should do or anything like that. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you later.